Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Meet Me at the Spot. I'm your host, Holly, and this week I am so excited to share my conversation with Amina Peterson. Amina, who also goes by Goddess Amina online, has dedicated her life to encouraging self-discovery and the utilization of pleasure as both a healing tool and a birthright within the fields of holistic wellness, sexual education, and social activism. Goddess Amina first began her foray into sexual healing in 2011 when she began organizing healing women's circles at her then home base in Hawaii. With a wide range of experiences as a healer, sexual and birth doula, intimacy coach, massage therapist, reiki master, and tantric sex educator, Amina opened ATL Tantra in Atlanta, Georgia, aiming to address the vital need for a safe space for Black women to learn sacred sexual healing while being seen and valued beyond fetishization and the white male gaze. Prior to her work as a sexologist, Amina served as a personal trainer and fitness coach for over 11 years and a yoga instructor for 5 years, utilizing physical fitness and mindfulness as a healing tool. As a self-proclaimed social justice warrior, Goddess Amina also has 20 plus years of experience in nonprofit management and a background in marketing, development, and events. There is nothing that Amina can't do, and I'm really excited to share my conversation. So let's jump in to my chat with Amina. Welcome, Amina, to the podcast. I am so excited to have you here.
I am excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I've been following you on social media for a hot minute, and I know a little bit about you through there, but very excited to get to know more about you. But for all the listeners, tell us who you are, what you're about.
Sure, I'm Goddess Amina. I am the founder and director of the Amina Institute, which was formerly the Atlanta Institute of Tantra, which we had a rebrand this year. So I'm no longer based in Atlanta and with a global practice now. It was past due. I am a somatic sexologist, sex educator. I am a sex worker. I've been a sex worker for almost 30 years now, with some breaks, but almost there. Started my career in the sex industry in the late 90s. And and yeah, and I'm just living this beautiful life of coaching. My work is a lot more talk and body based now, so I do a lot more body work, energy work, coaching, directing, that kind of thing now. But my heart is always going to be in the pleasure world. And so a lot of my events, a lot of my retreats and things like that are always rooted deeply in pleasure and play. And because that's where my joy lives. And so yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm a veteran. I am a married queer woman. I am an immigrant in another country and all of those things. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The more you kept like adding things on, I'm like, wow, you're magical. You're so cool. Oh, okay. I have so many questions that come to mind already, but what I'll start with is a question I usually ask all my guests is what got you started in this work that you do?
Money.
Oh
The
my
well
God, that's my favorite answer.
yeah. The well-paying, lucrative career when you do it right. And I actually, all jokes aside, responded to an ad before there was a backpage.com. There was actually the back pages of newspapers where all the prurient material went. And there was an advertisement for a sex surrogate. And that's how I got started. I responded to that ad and I started working for Dr. Dean Dow. This is when I was living in Chicago. And I was 19. And this was the 90s, $300 and up an hour sounded like an amazing deal. And so that's where I started. And I started simply because of the pay rate. I was working in retail and I had a pretty good job. I was making decent money. I wasn't broke by any means, but this pay looked really different than what I was taking home. And I got curious and I studied under him for almost a year, working with him and clients before I freaked myself out and took a break and yeah, but that's how I got started.
Yeah, that's amazing. And tell me a little bit more about the Amina Institute of Embodiment and Healing. What a
Yeah,
beautiful name.
thank you. The Amina Institute is my baby. It's been my baby for a while because it's changed names, but the vision is still the same. And we are the only nonprofit organization in the world that I know of, and I check often, that centers Black women in our pleasure. We do this through a variety of tools. I teach and train somatic sexologists. I teach and train cuddle practitioners, um, erotic body workers. I have a technique called erosomatic touch, and I train erotic body workers on that. I train sex educators and certified sex educators. So all of these are certification programs that we offer. I also host a variety of other just workshops and trainings to help people in community just have more access to their bodies, their sensations, understand their emotions, understand the relationship between emotions, sensations, feelings, needs, wants, bodies. I train folks in consent, kink leaders, play party leaders, think people like that are in roles where consent is a part of the ritual, a part of the play. And so I do that with folks. I host magical playtime retreats and play parties all under the umbrella. And just the idea, I mean, we are set up as a spiritual institution because I believe that we are all spiritual beings. And the body is sacred. I don't have a sacred view that is connected to any organized religion
Mhm.
that requires purity standards or some idea of, submission or whatever you want to pile on top of what is sacred. I believe that we are sacred in our existence. The land that we walk on is sacred. The animals that we commune with, that we exist on this planet with, are sacred. And so that we should treat ourselves as such, and our pleasure, therefore, will be sacred because it's a part of us. And
Yeah.
that's what we do.
So people won't be able to see this because this is just, audio, but there's just like something magical when you talk that just like I felt my shoulders go, oh, I can relax. Like this is yes, yes. That is so beautiful. Honestly, it is. It's really cool because a lot of people, when they think about like sex educators and people who talk about sex, a lot of times pleasure is not always part of the discussion. And man, we're missing big opportunities.
Yeah. People
Big,
don't learn that way.
yeah.
People hear the message, it goes in one ear and out the other. I know I did when I was younger, and that was sex ed was taught in that way. And I can't really remember much other than the hideous pictures of diseased genitals from any sex education course that I had. And it's unfortunate because people do connect only either a negative memory or they just disregard the whole thing, and that doesn't do anything for our bodies, our safety, our wellness. It
Mhm.
doesn't get the mission. It's like, well, it's such a waste of energy, and energy is so precious. Wasting it just seems so horrible.
Agreed. I used to be a health teacher in schools a long time ago. And yeah, it was so hard, like not being able to talk about a lot of things around, especially around like pleasure. Um, and it's really sad because I also have done work with adults who are in their 50s and 60s and beyond, who are recently divorced, for example, and they're like, I don't know what an orgasm feels like. I don't know what is pleasure when we're talking about sex, and it's like, oh my. Like we have just failed this human being and enjoy.
Yeah, we have. I mean, I would say that a good chunk of my clientele has always been over 40.
Hmm.
And, some part of me as a young person thought when I hit 40, I'd have it all figured out. And then to arrive at 40 and realize, oh, nobody has anything figured out about the body has been, eye-opening to say the least. But yeah, there's been a great failure in the body because we're afraid of the body. We're taught to be afraid of our power. It's it's a part of oppression. You can't actually have a society that moves so efficiently with oppressing people and and also teach them about the power that they have in their bodies. And so the two kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Um, whenever I get questions about like, well, why do people feel this way, and why are these like anti-sexual health laws and policies, and I'm like, oppression, y'all, like it's patriarchy, it's white supremacy, it's all of these things, all of these oppressive systems. Because if we're out having really great sex or really great intimate moments with people, that level of joy, they hate to see it. Like they really hate for us to be joyful human beings. It makes them so mad.
It doesn't, when you're full of pleasure and you know where your joy lives, it's hard to sell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a capitalist society, first and foremost. That's,
Mm-hmm.
that's our real religion in this country. And so if I can't sell you something, how to fix yourself, how to make yourself more desirable, how to do something, then that kind of disrupts the system. And the thing that I realized is, working as a sex worker, especially while SESTA and FOSTA first were announced as like these are the bills that we're presenting.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who were in sex work were in uproar, and those of us who had activist backgrounds were loud about it everywhere we could go. And the number of people who blatantly just like organizers, like folks that are now wondering, like, oh my God, what happened? How did we get here? The number of people who were so blasé about that, just ignoring that, like, that's not priority right now. Not realizing that, like, that was the first taste of this movement that we were seeing that was that public. And that reality of like, I'm going to dictate how you have access to pleasure, how you have access to sexual information, how you have access to sex workers. I'm going to change all of that. It happened a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that shift was such a big deal in what we're like really grasping at now and trying to understand, like, why are we being so censored and why is this happening? And I'm like, oh yeah, remember the horrors we're telling you? Remember the pleasure folks were telling you 10 years ago that this was a bigger deal and this was like real-time fascism happening in front of your face, and none of that was received, it didn't land. And so now we're in this space where we're like, oh yeah, we got left behind and we got lost in this process. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's been ongoing, it's been slow, it's been clear.
Mm-hmm.
Been ongoing, it's been slow, it's been clear. And so, yeah, we not having access to pleasure-based sex education is so strategically a part of the movements that we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be very interesting to see what happens as we, as we witness also at the same time, like a very much visual explosion of sexology, sexuality professionals, sex educators, um, and online sex workers, all very visibly a part of the discourse that's happening today.
Ah, yeah. Oh my goodness. I always just find it wild how people are like, I can't, how is this happening to me? It's like, because you never thought it would happen to you.
Uh,
And that is part of the system's working, right? Like if we disillusion groups of people to think they'll never be them, right? Like you get you thinking about like that somehow you're in a class that's better than everybody else. But at the end of the day, these people, they don't care about any of us at the end of the day. We're all throwaways. And, we don't contribute. I don't make billions of dollars or millions or hundreds of thousands or, I
Right,
I
right.
don't make that kind of money. Um, I'm no good. I'm no good to them. And just for me, it has made me want to continue to do more and be louder. And I'm like, I finally got to a point where I'm like, I'm not going to try and bypass the algorithm by like spelling sex in like 8 different ways with I'm like, I'm just writing sex. And listen, if the algorithm gets it, the algorithm gets it, but I'm not doing that. For me, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just gonna get louder. And I'm gonna get more obnoxious and more sex positive and like that's just the petty in me.
But one of the things that I realized with when I had my podcast was that the podcast space is so different in that it's kind of like ham radio, but for a younger generation. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, just go Google ham radio. But like when you have radio stations that are controlled by the FCC, then they are actually going to be, there's a whole system that's in place.
Mhm.
Podcasts have a little bit of a space to operate outside of that, right? Like, social media is very much controlled by billionaires. Radio is controlled by billionaires. Advertisements are paying for everything. And so we have these opportunities to have voices heard on podcasts, then we don't have to spend so much time really playing the algorithm game. It's just it is what it is. I liken it to I have a no shoes rule in my house.
Mhm.
And but I have some family that's just like offended by it. Like they're just like, well, you think I'm dirty kind of thing. And and it's I joke with them about my that has nothing to do with it, but no matter what I think, it's just there's no shoes here. That's the end of the rule. You can read the terms and conditions if you want to, but the rule is there's no shoes. And so I move through social media with that same energy.
Mhm.
Like there you have these rules and so I just my space is that I know where I can talk about things and I know where the message will be received and where it will land. And so I just, come in and I take my shoes off because we have spaces like this. We have spaces that are podcasts where the censorship is not happening. We have
Mhm.
spaces right now for the time being like Substack where,
Mhm.
for the time being where censorship is not happening um, because it's not dominated by advertisement, right? The people are paying for it. Substack is making money off of the people that are subscribing, so they don't need the advertisement. That may shift once they get bought out by venture capitalists, as
Mhm.
things do. But I think it's really important for us to find these spaces where our voices can expand, where we're not cowering, where we're standing up strong and tall, and we're not wasting our energy and wasting our breath.
Yeah. No, for sure. One of the big things for me for starting this podcast was I was making a lot of videos on TikTok, but you only have a couple minutes on TikTok to get a huge message across. And I am an elder millennial. I'm not really what TikTok wants. And that's fine. I'm cool with it. And I just felt so discouraged. I'm like, I can't talk about these really important things because I have a minute and then they expanded to 3 minutes. And then, I mean, 10 minutes, you might as well just do a YouTube video at that point.
Because YouTube is now the land of shorts.
Yeah.
So like,
Just when you think you figure out the algorithm says, no, 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 sweetie. It's cute.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I was like, I've always wanted to do a podcast, and it just kind of was something one day I said, get out of my own head. There are people who have amazing sex education, sex focused podcasts, but they're not me. My voice isn't there. And then when I started interviewing folks, y'all's voice is magical. Like, and getting to meet so many people and just build the circle of community is just, it's magical for me. Y'all are going to have to come back next week for part 2 as I continue my conversation and learning even more about Amina and the amazing work that she does. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Meet Me at the Spot. I'm your host, Holly, and this week is part 2 of my conversation with the one and only Amina. If you didn't listen to part 1 last week, make sure you go check that out and then come back here for this week's episode. Let's jump right in. I want to ask you, because I know you have used this term a couple times, so I want to make sure that folks who are listening know. So, somatic sexology. Talk a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, gladly. So somatic is soma. Let's start with soma. Let's just start there. Is a word that comes from Greek. It's a word that if I said it lazily, I will say it's the body, but it's more relating to our experience in the body. So not just the physical reality that we have a body and it moves, but actually our ability to perceive ourselves in our body, to notice what's happening in our body. And so when you partner that with sexuality, you can't really separate it from sexuality without dissociating. And so the practice of somatic sexology is really to offer tools and understanding, more even so than tools, on like who we are and what we're composed of beyond skin and flesh, those emotions, those thoughts, how they impact us, our history, how that is present in this moment, how that shifts how we move forward, and how that shifts our access to pleasure, our access to sensation. I've worked with so many folks that have experienced levels of trauma in their lives. When I say trauma, I'm not talking about like the boogeyman jumped out of the bushes and did something. I'm just like all the different ways that we experience trauma. Religious trauma, constant listening to a message that tells us that we're born horribly and we must repent or we must repair. That's traumatic to the body. A constant message saying that you are a lesser human because you are insert whatever long list of who the lessers are these days. But just hearing that over and over again, living in a world that believes that, that's trauma also. And so the way that that impacts how we even stand posturally is so measurable, so noticeable, and something that we can all tend to. And so somatic sexology is the tending to the body and tending to the way, what I like to think about is just like how we got used to being because we needed to be that way. And that was smart. And we did it and we survived. And then just checking in on that to see if that way is still necessary today, because that is where we kind of, we just will hold that, whatever it is, the shape, the way, we'll hold on to that without anyone putting a mirror in front of us and saying, like, do you need to hold on to this anymore? Is this thing that you were going through then, this thing that you had to survive then, this thing that you had to move through to get to here today, is that still here? What happens if it's not, right? That's one way that I look at it. It's just like how we experience sex is so shaped by all the things that we had to do to get to still be here today, to be moving in the intimate relationships that we're moving in. And we don't just get to drop all that off. And so it impacts us in so many ways. And I work in that way. And that's what somatic sexology really is rooted in. It's not a tool to fix people. I don't believe that people are projects that need to be fixed. I don't believe in like self-help and the guruisms of the day. I believe that we're all divine and that we all have the capacity to know ourselves and make decisions that suit us. I'm working so that we can be better resourced to make better decisions. And by better, the ruler is what I have in me. It's what you have in you. There's no one that's out there that's saying, oh, this is the better way. It's just like, does this work better for me? And do I have tools to to figure that much out? Am I able to know if this is better for me today than what I had yesterday? And do I want to stay in this way or, it's just that process.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That's a really amazing way to think about it. I think a lot of people, because of the way a lot of people, especially in this country, are taught about sex and sexual health and all of that stuff, is coming at a very like shame-based framework and does not take into consideration the pleasure aspect of it, but how all of these things really do interact and are interconnected with one another. Like we're not existing in our own body in these like little silos, right? Like everything is connected. I
Hmm.
love I love the way you talked about trauma too, because so often people think in order to have, say, like, I've experienced trauma, that it needs to be like this big, grand thing that happened to them. And it isn't always, right? For a lot of people, it isn't. Like, trauma shows up in so many ways.
I like to tell people because people do have that idea about trauma, like it's this gigantic thing or whatever they went through wasn't as big as this thing someone
Mhm.
else went through. And we all have one trauma that we've experienced, but that I believe we've all experienced because none of us that I know of were born in alien pods. And that's that one day we were floating in this warm amniotic sac where all of our needs were met, and the next moment we weren't. Our way we come into the world is there's a trauma. We've
Mhm.
all experienced it at some level, and it's not even things that we remember. And trauma is also passed through DNA. And so some of these things might not even be things that you have access to at
Mhm.
all in your memory bank, right? What we know now scientifically science has shown us that this is something that's past. So it's not what people have shame around admitting it, or people want to make theirs smaller so other people's traumas can exist, and that doesn't do anything for the body. There's not a trauma Olympics that we're going through. There will be no medals passed out. It's just simply acknowledging who you are in this moment and how life has impacted you
Mhm.
and what that means for you going forward.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was envisioning in my head the trauma Olympics, and it was really sad. I was like, oh my gosh, oh no, it's not good when you win a medal in that one. It's not as exciting. They don't play fun music. I love that you mentioned that. I often find myself like I talk about my childbirth experience when I had my daughter, and I had a really very non-eventful labor and delivery.
Mhm.
And I always say, I'm like, even though it wasn't as bad as like other people, like, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, pushing a human out of you is traumatic as hell. Like, it is, it rocks your whole world. It is the weirdest experience for everybody involved.
It is. It is. It is supernatural to witness. I don't have children, but I've been a birth worker and been in the room. I just doulaed again in December, and it is a wildly weird experience. And it doesn't matter how this birth that I just sat in was so easy. It was like I didn't have to do anything, but I was just like, oh, I'm just coaching a little bit. This is super easy. Doesn't matter what I see. The body is transforming itself traumatically to process this exit, right? That things are tearing and separating in ways that can heal but also weren't designed to rip open. So that's still traumatic to the body, right? If I fall off my bike and skin my knee, that's not as big as childbirth, but there's still trauma in that strawberry. Like my skin has still been torn open. And so it's just, yeah, understanding like that this can look a lot of ways. And it can impact our eroticism a lot of ways. It impacts our relationship with our body, how we see ourselves, how we are seen by others. Oh my God, I've worked with so many couples who, when the father of the child had witnessed the mother give birth, no longer could find erotic attraction because this person now became like Madonna to them and the Madonna horror complex. So they needed to do their like, kinky, freaky thing somewhere else. They couldn't do those with this woman now because she's now elevated into this space of sainthood, which is just horrible for the mom. Like, geez, I push out this baby, bend me over, but that's not like that's not where we're at anymore. And so it's like
Right.
all of these things are impacting the way that we show up erotically in ways people are not even thinking about.
Mm.
And we just, yeah, we use this work to help folks see what they have inside. We just shine a light. And that's mostly what it is just shining a light on them so they can see and they can find their way back into their bodies and back to whoever they were before shame was planted.
Yeah. I felt like a warrior when I was pregnant, and I was like, my body is doing the coolest things. I'm growing a whole human while I'm working my full-time job during this little pandemic we got going on. Like, I'm doing this stuff, and my body is great and it's amazing. And then I had my daughter, and I was like, nobody wants to touch your belly when you're not pregnant. Nobody's like, oh my gosh, look at those rolls, sweetie, cute. Nobody's doing that. And I'm glad. I'm honestly glad because it would be weird. It was fine when I was pregnant. I was like, yeah, of course, I don't care. And then you just start to kind of lose yourself in it and lose yourself. So everyone's excited when you're pregnant. Oh, you're glowing. Look at you. And then you have a baby, and very slowly it's like, good luck, sweetie. Good luck. And so that is difficult while also dealing with, like, your hormones all over the place, right? And it's just so much. I will say one of the greatest decisions I ever made was having a doula. I tell everybody, you don't need three-quarters of the crap you're going to put on your baby registry. I'm going to tell you that right now. It will sit there and collect dust. And you'll be like, why did I ask for this? Put money towards a doula as part of your registry because you will not regret it at all. And especially connecting with someone and having your thoughts and your wishes and what you envision be heard. And also,
Mm,
my doula was like, I don't do like a birth plan. I do like a birth wish list. If
right.
everything could go perfect, what would that look like? If these things couldn't happen, what next? Like, and I was an uh an advanced maternal age for my pregnancy. So
Nice way to put it. That's not how
yeah,
they always say
I
it.
know. They're like, we don't call it geriatric pregnancy. I'm like, you can call it whatever you want. I'm old. I get it. In this space, I'm an old lady. So I knew there was a lot of potential for risk, right? And so I had to plan all those things. I'm like, this is what my perfect plan would look like. And then when you get there, like, I had labored at home for like 40 something hours. I get to the hospital. They're like, have you thought about pain management? I was like, put an epidural, do it right now. Epidural, I'm done with this. Um, and everything like that. So my birth plan went right out the window. But my doula was there to support my needs. She had set up some essential oils. She had like these beautiful cards of positivity. She was playing my playlist that I asked her to play in the background. She set up like little twinkle lights around me. Like, she made it this magical experience, and she videotaped the whole thing for me on my phone. So I have that memory for the rest of my life. And I watch that video often because I'm like, dang, yeah, I did that thing. I
Yeah.
did that. And I didn't know she was videotaping. I gave her my phone. I'm like, take pictures. It doesn't need to be like the glamour shots. This giving birth is not cute. Like, get it all. And I didn't realize she was videotaping until I think it was the next day. I was just kind of looking through my phone at pictures, and I had seen it, and I was like, oh my goodness, you videotaped it. I'm so happy. And, just a wreck in the hospital. But I just think there's this weird thing that happens that you talked about where, like, the partner who's not giving birth sees you differently. You feel different too, right? Like, I feel like my body is so different, And I also feel like I'm somebody's mother now. I'm not just Holly back in college having sex with a whole bunch of people. Like I am a mother and a role model. Sexiness and loving my body and feeling connected to my body. I just can't. I can't do that. I love that you mentioned that because that disconnect is so real. It's so, so real.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's more common than a part of postpartum that a lot of folks don't talk about is that when you return from this amazing human accomplishment and you come back and now you're in a new role. And then what happens to your body when you're nursing and there's milk coming out, there's all kind of things happening. These breasts that used to be, pushed up in a demi are no longer doing that. There's a bra on, it's a miracle.
Hmm.
Go through that period for, however long you go through it for. But then when do you come back to, oh, these breasts are also like not only do they feed and nurture a baby, but they're also connected to my own pleasure as well. And, sometimes when you have a partner, the partner's kind of like waiting for the baby to get off of the boob so they can get back on it. And then it's also this recognition of like, well, when is the body my own? And
Hmm.
so, like, that transition space between, like, I go from birthing to nurturing to caring to, okay, you have a little autonomy now. I'm gonna take regular showers again. Put on panties and a bra on a regular basis. And then immediately someone else is like, all right, you're back. And there's not a moment for you to actually kind of come back into your body. So it's very hard for folks who give birth to even have that desire for intimacy to come back because there's that transition part is left off of discussions. It's not there. And so that work is super important. And I'm really hoping that in the coming years that I will get more and more birth workers that move through my training because the postpartum part of being a doula is still sex work. It's still this work of making sure that folks have access to understanding. Um, Folks that want to move back into pleasure have the tools so that it's comfortable. They have somewhere to process the shame or guilt around desiring something for themselves as a new parent. All of those things are alive in this work, and it's not all happy endings. There's so much more that's there.
Yeah, that feeling of being touched out is so real. I'm a very touchy-feely person. I'm a hugger. After I had a kid, I'm like, please don't touch me. Like, don't breathe near me. It's driving my anxiety. And now my anxiety all of a sudden manifests itself as like rage and anger. And like, that's not ever who I've been. What the hell? And so for me, it was so hard to adjust to that, to just feeling all of that like kind of negative energy flowing through my body is how it feels for me, and recognizing that it's okay to say I need a break from everybody. I just need to go sit upstairs, lay in the bed, and be a self for just a little bit. Center, let me get it together, and then I can come back in and join in on whatever's happening downstairs. It feels weird that we're already like getting to our time. I've just been learning so much from you and just so relaxed by you. You just have changed my whole energy for the night, honestly. It's been really great. But I always like to end asking you what sort of parting advice you would give for the listeners.
Trying to fix yourself.
Mm.
That's my part. Stop seeing yourself as always something in need of repair. Your body, if whether you're happy with it or not, does not need to be repaired. You are not a project to be fixed. You are human. And the only way you get to start experiencing your humanness and the humanity of others is if you start accepting who you are today and noticing where you can expand out into. Stop trying to fix yourself. Stop. That's always going to be my parting advice. There's just no need for all of the self-help industry is like a trillion dollar industry now. There's so many things that are telling us something is wrong with us. There's so many systems that are at play